Before I got into the Kingdom Hearts series, there were a few things that I had heard about these games. I knew about the big feat. I knew the story was weird, but the main thing I guess I overheard was that Kingdom Hearts 2 is like the top dog when people rank these games. And why is that? Are they right? Well, now that I am 3 games deep into my Kingdom Hearts journey, I've got a lot to say about Kingdom Hearts 2. While I really did enjoy my time with the first game, and Rechain of Memories is definitely a game that you can play, I think it is with 2 where everything just perfectly falls into place. The story is set up to conclude the events set up in the first 2 games, basically capping off everything as a trilogy of sorts. So why isn't this game named Kingdom Hearts 3? Well, don't worry about numbers, okay? But I do feel for the casual Kingdom Hearts fan who plays just 1, 2, and 3 and has no idea what's going on or why certain things are happening, because while this game absolutely is a sequel to Kingdom Hearts 1 in gameplay, a large portion of the story is actually set up in Chain of Memories. So much so that you begin playing the game as this new character, Roxas, who is living in this mysterious Twilight town, and it's a very different opening than you might expect if you had just beaten Kingdom Hearts 1 and jumped into the second game. But with the added context of Chain of Memories, you'll be asking very different questions. The original Kingdom Hearts 2 released on PlayStation 2 in December 2005, just about 3 years after the first game. And just 1 year before that, we got Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. For many PlayStation 2 gamers, I don't think you can hear the cat meowing. For many PlayStation 2 gamers, you probably didn't also have a Game Boy Advance just laying around, or you might have just assumed this was a skippable spin-off that didn't have very much importance to the story. Now, I didn't get into the series initially because I didn't own a PlayStation 2. But I also didn't own a Game Boy Advance, so Square Enix was really not making these games very easy for me to play. Luckily, these days you can find the HD collection of these games on pretty much every modern console, and you can find all kinds of debate online as to what the best order to play them is. I've been going through them in release order, and I can't see how there would really be a better order so far, but I guess maybe I'll see things differently once I've gotten into some of the later games. So let's get into this. As I mentioned, Kingdom Hearts 2 starts you off waking up as this new boy named Roxas, who is enjoying the summer with some of his buddies in Twilight Town. You're trying to come up with the funds for some sweet treats with the crew. Roxas finds a few odd jobs around town, each with some weird mini-games to play, and there's a lot to see in Twilight Town. Luckily, to get around a little bit faster, you can hop onto one of the many rad skateboards just laying around town. Twilight Town is pretty impressive for its time. While it's obviously no GTA 3, I think what they did here is pretty wonderfully designed, with a warm color scheme that really hits you with the summery vibes. And the music! Yoko Shimomura is a legend, and this track in particular, I could listen to this all day, every day. I think I wouldn't mind living in Twilight Town so much if this was what I had to listen to. I was happy to see some new Final Fantasy residents in Twilight Town. Cypher is here, and he's still a bully, albeit considerably less threatening than he was in Final Fantasy VIII. He's even got Fujin and Raijin at his side, which is pretty hilarious seeing these kidified versions of the characters. Vivi, everyone's favorite black mage from Final Fantasy IX, also makes an appearance, but his characterization is a little bit off. He seems to be kind of a bad guy, but that can't be right. And it's not, so you'll need to investigate that. Things start getting real weird for our boy Roxas, though. He's pursued by enemies, he has dreams about a familiar spiky-haired kid, and is visited by Naminé, who you should remember from Chain of Memories. She unfortunately explains to Roxas that he's not a real boy at all, and he makes it to that creepy mansion from Chain of Memories, and I don't think he likes what he finds there. Mystery Man Diz is back to confuse the absolute shit out of this poor child, and to reveal to him that his entire Twilight Town is a simulation, and to explain to him that he has to rejoin with Sora. Thus is the end of Roxas's summer vacation and the beginning of your real journey through Kingdom Hearts 2. But man, what kind of an intro is that? I feel like I'm giving away like massive pieces of the story here, but this is all just in the first couple hours of the game, so how can we not talk about it? I loved the introduction for the game. For the story, for sure, but it is a very long segment. much longer than the Destiny Islands intro, so I could see how some players would want to jump right into the action. But you can also see, what with the weird-ass sleep pods and all, why this game does expect you to be at least familiar with the events of Chain of Memories. The intro sets up probably the most important concept of this game. While with Kingdom Hearts 1, the main threat was the Heartless, in Kingdom Hearts 2, we've got to deal with nobodies. When a person's heart is consumed by darkness, they lose their body and soul, become a little monster thing. You guys know about the Heartless by now. We've executed countless of them. These little and sometimes big guys are basically just your typical evil minions. However, if one is to have their heart consumed by darkness, yet still has a strong enough will, they can lose their heart and maintain a body. This is a nobody, and they are a central point to the plot this time around. While these nobodies are capable of a lot, without a heart, they can't really feel any true human emotion. While this might seem like a bit of retroactive storytelling, it is explained as these nobodies are not natural and they aren't supposed to exist. So that's probably why you don't really see them as a threat in the first game, despite them being created in the first game. Anyways, that's Heartless and Nobodies. It does come up more than a little bit in this game, so got it memorized? Once you actually do gain control of Sora, your real Kingdom Hearts journey begins. That's to say, you'll be visiting a bunch of different Disney worlds in search of your friends Kairi and Riku. Similar to the first game, actually. There is a format to this game's story, though, that I really enjoyed. While there are still little bits and pieces of the original Kingdom Hearts story sprinkled across the Disney worlds, for the most part, the big plot points are covered in the beginning, and then there's a huge story section in the middle of the game. And then, of course, they tie up everything in the last world. It almost sets up the story into 3 acts, whereas with Kingdom Hearts 1, the game goes super Square Enix RPG, more towards the final moments of the game. With 2, we get this in the beginning, and then at the end, of course, but also by putting this huge original story section of the game in the middle, I feel like it helps everything feel a little bit more evened out. And the Square Enix magic is so strong in this game. The twists are fantastic and keep coming until the end. The villains are handled wonderfully, and this time around, I really enjoyed the use of Final Fantasy characters. With Kingdom Hearts 1, they definitely feel more like cameos, and they still kind of are, but as we learn more about the origins of Traverse Town, I feel like this leads to the Final Fantasy characters having more to do here. Leon has returned, Aerith is back, Cloud and Sephiroth, of course, and these guys actually have something, as I said, unique to fight for in this game, and along with that comes some very epic scenes that you could really only find in something like, I guess, Kingdom Hearts or maybe a Dissidia, and that's where you get Final Fantasy characters from various different games all combined in the plot. It works really cool. Sora is, of course, returning as the main character, and he hasn't changed a whole lot. Still the happy-go-lucky protagonist you'd expect out of a Disney game. The course of the story does lead him to become a little bit more introspective, though, but ultimately he's up to the same old power of light and friendship conquering darkness kind of stuff that you'd expect. The Duck is back, and Goofy is here too, and these guys act as your comic relief, and they get the job done pretty good. So I'd say strongly as ever, with the silly voice acting and over-the-top reactions. There are a few moments that genuinely made me laugh out loud at just the absurdity of everything. I mean, like Donald Duck and Goofy reacting to the Final Fantasy characters, or like all of the craziness going on with the Organization 13. It's really silly, and I think I like it. You'll also find that King Mickey has a much more prominent role in the story this time around, and I was delighted to see him in action as a controllable character, at least for some small segments. I have read that in Kingdom Hearts 1, Disney wasn't necessarily confident in the series enough to let them use their pivotal character outside of just that one scene. But I guess once the dollars started pouring in, they changed their tone on that one. This works well, though, because there's a little bit of mystery around this mouse that helps hype him up to be this strong background force that's helping you alongside the way, almost as a counter to all of the nobodies and what they're doing in the background. As I mentioned, your search for XIII continues through this game as well. And even though we did find her in Kingdom Hearts 1, they were separated at the end of that game. Unfortunately, this does mean she spends the majority of her time in the background of the story. And while narratively it makes sense, it does feel like I've been chasing after this damn girl for a very long time now. So while I feel like we don't get to spend as much time with XIII as I would have liked, we do get a couple Naminé scenes at least. Naminé, of course, being Kairi's nobody. And I wasn't sure as to what capacity she would be around for this game. And even then, it's not a whole lot, but I guess that's one of the reasons why I want to check out what's going on with the 358 days, to see more of what's going on with Roxas and Naminé and the nobodies. Riku, however, gets a nice spot in the story this time around. Through Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories, Riku has been on a journey to exist and control the darkness within himself. And while I thought that the character was a little bit of an obnoxious brat in Kingdom Hearts 1, he's actually done a pretty good job at redeeming himself. The way that he's brought back into the story is really interesting as well, with a fun twist to go alongside it. But not unlike Kairi, a lot of what he does just happens in the background. In the foreground, though, well, that's where you've got a lot of your Disney worlds to fight through. We've got 12 Disney worlds this time, and some of them are returning, along with some new additions. In all of these different Disney worlds, you'll find that they have, abandoned the platforming, for the most part anyway. In contrast, you'll find more long halls leading up to big open areas that you'd fight things in. It's a lot less focused on exploration this time around, but the worlds are still crafted with a lot of love to the source material. I think the emphasis is just focused on combat this time around, and in order to keep things running smooth, there's a lot less stuff to jump around on. Now, in my opinion, I am fine with that. I never really enjoyed the platforming in Kingdom Hearts 1, but as a somewhat newcomer to the series, my perspective might be a little bit different than those who grew up with the platforming in Kingdom Hearts 1. I did like a lot of the worlds, but I would say my favorites here, well, I guess probably Timeless River for the art style. I love the way that certain worlds affect Sora and the gang's appearance, and this world feels like the perfect place for that. The black and white character models just look so cool and so retro. It's very fun. Beast's Castle was also a great new addition, and I like that they brought in the worlds that were missing from Kingdom Hearts 1 but had summons. So they were already somewhat integrated into the Kingdom Hearts universe. This helps the whole world feel a lot more connected, as now we finally get to see what Mulan is up to, and now we get to visit the Lion King's world. I've got to say though, bringing in Pirates of the Caribbean may be a strange choice there. Surprisingly, the character designs don't feel super out of place, but it does feel a little weird, and I feel like maybe the inclusion was probably because, well, this was the most recent Disney movie that they were working on. But is this the only time they've ever brought in anything live action into a Kingdom Hearts game? I wouldn't know for sure, but I think that is probably true. I'd say my favorite worlds, though, are almost always just the original ones, like Radiant Garden, The World That Never Was. These worlds are so distinctively Kingdom Hearts feeling, and combined with the original music, that's the vibe that I'm looking for when I'm playing a Kingdom Hearts game. Not saying that the Disney stuff is bad, but it is what I get least excited about, and my Disney nostalgia is pretty strong, but it's really not as strong as it is for some people, and nowhere near my love of Final Fantasy JRPGs and stuff like that. Now, why do people say that Kingdom Hearts is so good to begin with anyway? Well, from what I understand, a big part of that is the combat. And as someone who found the combat in Kingdom Hearts 1 to be good, but a little bit sluggish or weird at times, and that camera can be a real pain in the ass, I would say my experience with Kingdom Hearts 2 has been very different. Most of my complaints have been addressed and fixed here. The flow of combat is done really well. Stringing attacks from enemy to enemy feels better than ever. And as you level up Sora, you can continue to get more and more abilities that improve the feel of combat and the flow of everything. Along with your basic attacks, magic and summons are here, and we've got some new concepts to work with. First off, we've got drive forms, which are transformation power-ups and change Sora's gameplay along with his physical appearance. There are 6 different drive forms, of which all have different strengths and weaknesses, such as some being better at physical damage, some being better at magic, and more. These forms have to be powered up in kind of weird ways though, so make sure that you're reading about them in the menus as they unlock, because you'll have to do some weird tasks to upgrade some of them, and you'll want to at least level up them a certain amount because some of your movement options, like your actual dodge roll and extended jumps, they're actually hidden behind your drive forms. And that's not to say they're only usable in the form, but you unlock them by powering up the drive form. And I don't think I like that. I don't think that's handled the best. I think you probably should have just unlocked your movement just through normal leveling. Reaction commands are the new thing, and they bring a lot of variety to each enemy encounter. By hitting the triangle button under certain conditions, Sora can use unique abilities to take on the enemy. It's always a flashy combat option that can help spice up some of the more button mashy moments. Magic is back and can similarly be assigned to some quick casting shortcut buttons on your controller, but how many of the actual spells work? They have been rebalanced or changed entirely. While certain spells use more MP than others, using a cure drains all of your remaining MP, and once consumed, you just have to wait for a cooldown, and then you'll recover all of your MP. I didn't quite get the hang of this change at first, but once you do understand how it's working, you'll find that the game actually encourages you to use more spellcasting than ever. Just make sure that you're smart with when you use your healing. Summons are, of course, still very much a thing, but similar to the first game, I didn't really find myself using them very often, so I'm gonna leave this section very short, but I guess summons are here and they're cool. Positioning back attacks, timing parries, and jumping around with your aerial attacks, it's all very vital to your survival, along with learning what enemies to use certain magic spells on. It's all feeling pretty good here, and like I said, everything is just so much smoother than in the first game. I really do think they nailed the feel of combat here. Donald Duck and Goofy join Sora on the battlefield, and I didn't have nearly as many issues with these guys as I did in Kingdom Hearts 1. Their AI gets the job done pretty fine for the most part. You can still bring along a guest party member as you'll visit different Disney worlds, and these guys are usually quite capable as well. There are new team attack mechanics that are super fun as well, and even though some of these cutscenes can kind of get in the way of the general flow of things, I think they're worth it to add to the spectacle and just overall fun of the combat. The Disney boss battles are pretty good, although I do miss, at least in concept alone, the scale of some of these big boss fights from Kingdom Hearts 1. There's a lot less climbing up big enemies to hit them in the soft spot. On the other hand, fighting against the camera is also pretty much a non-issue, so it's a trade-off that feels very welcome in my opinion. That said, while I enjoyed the Disney boss battles, I loved the Organization 13 fights. Each organization member plays by their own rules, so you'll have to figure out the new gimmick for each one. They even have some returning Organization 13 boss fights from Chain of Memories as optional challenges to take on, and fighting these bosses with the regular Kingdom Hearts gameplay feels really awesome in comparison to that of Chain of Memories. Oh yeah, and we haven't even really talked about Organization 13 yet, right? So what even is that? Well, I'm gonna leave you guys hanging for a little bit longer. I will say, playing through the standard difficulty was maybe just a little bit too easy, even for me, and I've never claimed to be good at anything, let alone Kingdom Hearts, but even I found this to be a little bit too easy. But I have gone and checked out some of the harder difficulties, and yeah, I think it's definitely safe to say that things have been toned down quite a bit from the first game. In Kingdom Hearts 1, I was somewhat frequently finding myself frustrated in boss fights, and I didn't really run into anything like that, so I'd actually recommend people, even new players, just popping this onto a higher difficulty right away. The Gummy ship sections were noticeably missing in Chain of Memories, but they're back, and to my surprise though, the Gummy ship levels kind of rule now. They're a lot longer, with more variety to the enemies, the levels change perspective frequently, they throw all kinds of obstacles at you, and they even have their own kind of boss enemies to take on. Who are we shooting at in these ships anyway? Are these enemy ships supposed to be piloted by Heartless? Did they make these ships? Where are they getting them from? These sections always felt so disconnected from everything else going on. Flying through outer space to get to new Disney worlds, it always felt kind of strange, but at least now we've got a few scenes that take place inside the cockpit, and it's pretty silly, but you know what? I'm here for it. This is our weird Star Trek journey through Disney worlds, and yeah, it is what it is, I guess. I'm not sure if the Gummy ship levels reach the heights of Star Fox gameplay or anything like that, but I'm glad to see that Square Enix got a lot more creative with the level design, and upgrading your ships is nowhere near as painful as it was in Kingdom Hearts 1. The God tier music and sound design from Kingdom Hearts 1 is back, and things are sounding better than ever in the sequel. I'd be more surprised if this wasn't the case though. The Disney remixes sound great, but again, where Kingdom Hearts shines the most is when it comes to its original concepts, and the same thing applies to the music here. Yoko Shimomura continues to bring pure magic to my ears, and I think she's really up there with the likes of Uematsu and Mitsuda as like some of the greatest video game RPG composers out there ever, you know what I mean? And alongside the fantastic music, Square Enix continues in bringing A-list voice acting talent for the English dub. While they've switched up some things with the Final Fantasy VII characters, so now they have their Advent children voices, this does mean that Aerith, she sounds very flat, she's just so monotone and boring, but that's really the only voice in the entire game that felt out of place for me, outside of just having the preference for the Kingdom Hearts 1 Leon as David Boreanaz, I think, had a cooler voice. But yeah, outside of that, I thought the voice cast sounded great here. Haley Joel Osment returns, and he's sounding a bit older for sure, but he still sounds great as Sora. And at least from what I've heard from trailers and like in Smash Bros, he still does the Sora voice really good. Most notably, Christopher Lee joined the cast in Chain of Memories as Diz, and his character has a much larger presence in Kingdom Hearts 2. Many of the original Disney voice actors are here as well, and it really helps build this game up to become such a nostalgic masterpiece. And I can say that nostalgia was built into this game by design. Even at the game's release, most of these Disney titles that they worked with are at least 10 years old, and many of them much older. And I think that's what helps give Kingdom Hearts such massive appeal. Kids can obviously enjoy it, as they're probably eating up all that Disney stuff already, but for players who might be a little bit older, it can remind them of their own childhood. And for adults who revisit some of these films with children of their own, I don't know, I feel like it's a really unique and special concept, and I can see how this series has become so popular over the years, because it ages like a fine wine, right? Now finally, let's go over the game's villains. This mysterious Organization 13, of which we've kind of encountered in Chain of Memories. They are a particularly threatening group of nobodies. Remember them? So, no hearts, strong wills. This group is constantly scheming behind the scenes, and while they certainly aren't the good guys here, there are some members of the group that you definitely feel for. These guys, for the most part, they just want their hearts back before their time runs up, and they disappear from existence. It's kind of sad, right? But I can say for sure, you won't feel so bad when you're fighting against them, mashing them with your Keyblade. Axel, of course, steals the show out of all of the organization members. His cocky attitude is always fun, and it's already been established that he's not afraid to go against the plans if he disagrees with the organization. I know this character is a fan favorite, and I'm excited to see what they do with him in later games, even if they might have to... I know he's in later games, but I'm sure he'll be back. Xemnas is the main villain from the game, and of course, similar to Ansem from Kingdom Hearts 1, he kind of looks like a weird, scrapped Final Fantasy VII character. Well, I mean, he even kind of looks like an alternative take on Zack Fair, at least in this portrait where he had some color to his hair. Love the design though, but I don't want to say too much here because, you know, when it comes to the main villain situation of this game, yeah, they're gonna keep throwing twists at you the whole time. Just remember, This guy seems to be in charge of the organization, and remember what you learned about Nobodies and Heartless, because it's very important to understanding the character. But what are his motives, and what's he even trying to accomplish? Well, Kingdom Hearts, obviously, and if you don't know what I mean by that, well, just play the damn game. But when people say that Kingdom Hearts is a confusing game, well, I can kind of see it. It has its own concepts of life and death, what makes a person a person. And the game uses terms like darkness in a lot of weird ways. And even the game's name, Kingdom Hearts, it means something. It's not quite what you'd expect. But for spoiler reasons, I probably shouldn't tell you anything more than that. I'm just saying, this game is weird. Maybe with Kingdom Hearts, it's not so much that it's confusing, but it's weird. Like if I was out on a date and this girl asked me what I've been up to and I explained to her the plot of Kingdom Hearts, I kind of get why they probably never want to talk to me again. But if they, but you know what? If they just gave it a shot, maybe they might come around to this weird ass world too, with its weird ass lore and everything. I think I have come around to it. It's good stuff. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I think it's clear they came up with some of these ideas after the original game's release and then worked backwards, inserting them into the story. And that's kind of hard to do well. So far though, I don't think the story has lost the plot, and Chain of Memories does a fantastic job at introducing these concepts so that you're not completely lost as to what's going on. I am a little bit worried because sometimes I see comments mention time travel shenanigans in the later games, and yeah, that can get kind of messy. But so far, I've enjoyed the story as far as I've seen. As for Kingdom Hearts 2, this has become my favorite game in the series. They were right. But I know that that's a very subjective thing. If you really enjoyed the platforming in Kingdom Hearts 1, or like the game's more dialed back story, I can definitely see why you'd have an argument there. And as for a standalone game, yeah, I'd still obviously recommend playing 1 first, but because with 2, it's a game that's really only made better by playing through the first 2 games. I just really like it. I like the way it caps off everything. Maybe I'm a trilogy guy, I like things in parts and 3 is the magic number. Kingdom Hearts 2, despite its name, really does feel like it caps off this trilogy. And the pacing of the story feels great as well. It has touching and surprising moments, and the game wraps up the story with a very satisfying conclusion. Even though I know it just keeps on going from here, I really liked where everything tied up. And the remaining questions that I do have about the story, I'm looking towards the game's prequel in Kingdom Hearts 358 Days, or what is it? 358 over 2? No, 358 Days over 2? Yeah, that's what it is. The gameplay is stronger than ever, with tight and responsive controls, and Sora can become an absolute beast on the battlefield. It's just a straight-up fun game to play, and I can't wait to see what's next for Sora and the gang. But not first without learning the backstory of Roxas and the Organization 13. Well, I can't wait to get there, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See ya!